Hello everybody, welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia and today I'm going to do the March wrap-up. I don't think I ever did a February wrap-up, it just sort of got away from me, but I wanted to do one in March because I read quite a few excellent books, a few less than excellent, but I wanted to kind of sum up my reading experience for the month of March. If you are new, welcome to the channel. If you are returning, glad you're still here. And if you unsubscribed because you didn't like my April TBR, don't let the door hit you on the way out. I know that several of us who posted videos talking about our plans to read for Trans Girl April, the readathon hosted by Sake Heavy and Books and Bow, experienced some unsubscribing, and I am all about quality over quantity. So if you left because you don't want to hear about diverse reading experiences and the lives of other people different than yourselves, then you're not on the right channel. So the rest of you, I'm glad you're here. So today we're going to talk about the March books. So for the first theme that I participated in for March was March of the Mammoths, which is a challenge to read books, one or more books that are 800 pages or more. And so I did select one mammoth that I did read in the month of March, and that was David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. I really enjoyed this experience. So this was also my trial of reading more than one book at the same time. I had a video, I guess it was back at the beginning of maybe the TBR for March, where I talked about the fact that I am a one book at a time reader, and I wasn't sure if I could read David Copperfield at the same time as other books. And I got a lot of really great comments from people, some people like myself, other people that do read multiple things in multiple formats. And my big takeaway from that is that the key to success with this is the differences in your books. You're reading two different genres or two really different time periods. Like you wouldn't want to be reading Great Expectations in a book and David Copperfield on audio or something at the same time, then you get totally confused. But as long as there's a lot of difference in the content, that works better. And this really did work for me. So I just read this a couple chapters a night, and I didn't really care if I ended up finishing within the month of March, but as it turned out that I did kind of come into the end of it around the last week of March. And I really did love this. I'm only at the beginning of my Dickens journey. I've read Great Expectations a couple of times. I've read Christmas Carol many times. And then I'm trying to branch out and read different books. So David Copperfield, I think I really liked this the best so far out of the ones that I've read. I think just the David's voice, his character, the supporting characters, the humor, all of it I just really enjoyed. And the balance of the difficulty and the sadness of his young life and, the poverty and the abuse, along with a sense of humor and the nurturing characters that he met along the way and the kind of found family that he sort of put together. All of that I really, really enjoyed. And it really enhanced for me. It was like kind of a unofficial dual read or paired reading with, oh, it's upside down, good grief, Demon Copperhead. I think I need some more caffeine. Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. You don't have to read these two books together. If you just read one or you read the other, you will have an excellent reading experience. But it really enhanced the books for me. The fact that I read this one, I think, in January, and then this one close enough together to be able to observe the parallels. And I might or might not do a separate video, kind of a spoiler included video, where I talk about my thoughts about the two books together. I don't know if there's an interest in that. You can let me know in the comments, but I don't want to say too much about them here. But for me, it really enhanced and embellished the experience. And I have lots of things to say that I cannot say about what I thought about Kingsolver's adaptation. And if I look at, made a character chart side by side of the people who appear in both books, but not exactly the same, who I liked better in one rendition or the other, where the plot points were updated or changed, things like that. But I won't say them now. Let me know if you want to hear about this. The next theme that I participated in was March Mystery Madness, and I read 3. There was 4, but there's a DNF in the pile. The best one of the bunch as far as mysteries go was The Exiles by Jane Harper. Put a picture up here, but I've returned it to the library, and that was the 3rd book in her series, kind of on again, off again series, because she's written some standalones in between with the same character whose name was Aaron Falk, and it begins with The Dry. I always forget the name of the second one, but I'll put it up on the screen. And then the 3rd one was Exiles, and the mystery was good. There was a couple of different crimes. He didn't come in planning to solve a crime. He's on a vacation. Sort of a vacation. He's attending the christening of a friend's child. When he came to attend this a year before, a woman went missing that was in their group of family and friends, and so they had to postpone, and it's never been solved. And there's also another older mystery in town of someone who was killed in a hit and run, and they never caught the perpetrator. So Aaron gets curious and begins to look into both of these unsolved mysteries, and then he has some personal growth as well in terms of what he's going to do next with his life. So I really enjoyed that book. The other mysteries were kind of a mixed bag for me. I read Agatha Christie's The Mysterious Affair at Styles, which is the first book with the appearance of Hercule Poirot, and I talked about this at greater length in a Friday Reads video, but the mystery itself was fun and entertaining, and I didn't guess the ending ahead of time. But for me, the reading experience was a little bit marred by the anti-Semitism and racist comments in there, even though I know that she is prone to do this. And every time I read one of her books, this kind of happens. Like, a long enough time elapses that I sort of forget about that, and then I read it and it pops up and I'm like, ugh. So I don't know what the future holds for me in Agatha Christie, but I did read it. All right, then there was also a mystery DNF, and that was The Family Chow by Samantha Chang. And I didn't even get very far. I read a few chapters and I just was not engaged. The characters' dialogue seemed very unrealistic and stilted to be dialogue between a group of young brothers. It's the story of a family where the patriarch runs a well-known Chinese restaurant in their town in Wisconsin, and then there are 3 brothers. The mom has left the father and is living at sort of a Buddhist retreat in town, and there's a family meeting called. One of the brothers is upset that he is not receiving the partnership in the restaurant that his father promised. And anyway, so I didn't even get all the way up to the murder, but apparently the father is found murdered, and there's different people with motives, and I guess later on there's a trial. I never got that far. It sounded really, really good, but it just wasn't for me. And then I asked in the comments if I should try to give it another shot, and everybody else in the comments who read it was kind of like, eh. So I just I don't know. Moving on. Then I read another one that was a little underwhelming, which was The London Seance Society by Sarah Pinner. I grabbed this at the library right before I left on my trip, and I thought it would be a perfect book for traveling, kind of diverting on the lighter side. I didn't want anything too dark or heavy or challenging. And so on those points it succeeded, but it just wasn't good enough. I'll talk about it more on Friday Reads, but it's set in Victorian England. It's set in the atmosphere of seances and a group of spiritualists, and some people are for real, some people are fraudulent. There's murder, there's 2 murders to solve. And so all of it sounded so fun and right up my alley for a diverting read, but I'll talk about it more on Friday Reads and tell you what I thought it did well and not so well. March was also about Irish writers. There was a theme, and there was a number of prompts and things, and I really did not succeed in following any of that, but I did read one book actually read 2 things, but I read Antarctica by Keegan, and These are, this is a set of short stories, and this was her first book. I double check when it came out, 1999. And the stories in this book, I did enjoy them. They ranged, there was a few that I really loved and the rest I liked. I wouldn't say I love it in the way that I love Small Things Like These and Forster, but if you are a fan of those books, I do recommend that you go back and read these and kind of see where it all began, and you can see some themes and elements of her later work in these stories. I did enjoy reading it. The last thing of hers that I have not yet read is Walk the Blue Fields, which is another collection of short stories. So I have that on my list to find. It's kind of hard to track that one down, but I'm looking for it, and I will eventually read that as well because I am a big fan of her work, and she is not terribly prolific. So once I've read that, then I just have to reread or wait for something new to come out. The last book that is from some kind of thing I'm participating in was The Longest Journey by Ian Forster, which was the March selection for the Forster read-along. But sadly, this was also a DNF. So 2 DNFs in a month is really unusual for me because I really don't do that very often at all. And then I had 2, but that's the way it goes sometimes. It was just a slog. I got about 100 pages in and then I bailed, and frankly, it was boring. The characters were not compelling in any way. The main protagonist, I couldn't even really get a grasp on describing him. It wasn't even that he was unlikable or anything. It was like I don't even know what was going on with him at all. And in the Discord, I don't think anybody loved this book. Some people did finish it and others did not, and I don't think anybody really felt like it was a strong offering from Ian Forster. And oddly enough, this is the one he described as his favorite, and I don't get it, but that's what he said. So this was a flop for me, and that's the way the cookie crumbles. All right, so that leaves us with a few more books that didn't fit into any categories as far as March reading themes. These are the just because books that I felt like reading during March. The first one is Signal Fires by Dani Shapiro. I really loved this book. It was, I guess you'd call it a domestic drama of sorts, but it is about a family. It's set in multiple times that begin in the 80s and move forward. It goes back and forth in time a lot. So if you don't like a book that jumps forward and back frequently and among several different characters' point of view, then this might not work real well for you, but I love books like that. So at the very beginning of the book, there is a car accident. 2 teenagers who are siblings and then one friend are in a car. They've been drinking and they have an accident. And the repercussions of that night kind of reverberate through the siblings, their father, and also the stories about a neighbor family. And the way that people intertwine throughout their lives, it's hard to describe it in a very short and summative fashion, but it is crafted really beautifully. There are secrets, there are unspoken, unresolved, tragic thoughts and feelings. There are lots of times in this book where somebody almost brings up a topic or thinks something and doesn't say it, and that choice has consequences. During the course of the book, the tone is pretty sad and dark, but somehow at the end, it isn't. By the final conclusion, something about the way that the lives gradually heal and mend and connections are made between people unexpectedly kind of draws it all together. So this was really good. Another one that I read this month that has gone back to the library was Our Wives Under the Sea. I'll put a picture up here. I cannot comment on this book at this point, even though I've talked about it in the past, because now it is in my field for judging in the quarterfinals of the BookTube prize. So I did receive a BookTube prize assignment, and I'm going to talk about that on Friday Reads and show you the 6 books that I need to read and rank. I've already read 3 of them. I need to read the other 3, and then I need to come up with my ranking. So in the course of that time period, we are asked to not review books or post any kind of, opinions or evaluations of those books during the time period. So I did read that, but I will not comment again on it at this time. And then finally, Parable of the Talents. Well, I talked about this at length in a previous Friday Reads, but I wasn't quite finished with it. And this book just repeatedly blew me up. I would gather myself and glue myself back together, and then she'd blow me up again. Octavia Butler with her prescient mind. This book is unbelievable. The 2 books together, Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents. I'm not going to go back over everything again that I've talked about in previous ones, but just to briefly sum it up, this is a sequel to Parable of the Sower, and it is a post-apocalyptic story about people surviving in the wake of great unrest in the U.S. And one young woman who becomes a leader of survivors, establishes a community called Acorn, but she is very much a strong believer in a faith called Earthseed that she has founded. And that is her strength and her weakness, because that is the sticking point that attracts the attention and the ire of a very ultra-conservative movement that is taking over in the U.S. and headed by a presidential candidate who's running on the platform of Make America Great Again. Octavia Butler, she blew me up hard with these books, man. I loved them. I did leave out that during the Irish portion, I forgot to mention that I did reread the story The Dead by James Joyce, which I love. I meant to put that in my pile, and that is just such a beautifully written story, and I like to come back to it from time to time. Dubliners is the only thing I've read by James Joyce. I have never voyaged into the novels, but never say never, right? All right, I think that is the wrap-up of the wrap-up. That is what I read in the month of March. Tell me if you have thoughts on any of these books that I have shared, or if you read something else that was particularly dazzling that you would like to talk about in the comments below. I will be back on Friday Reads, where I will share my thoughts in more detail on the London Seance Society, another book that was absolutely fantastic that I just finished, and then everything I am reading for the rest of this week. So if you want to know what it was, you have to come back. Until then, I hope you have a great week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.